welcome to the House of ZK Radio, which is a focused podcast and media channel exploring everything ZK, zero knowledge. Hi everyone, welcome to House of ZK's Bitcoin series special with Eli Ben-Sasson from StarkWare. Thank you so much, Eli, for being here today. We're all very excited to have you back on House of ZK for another episode and hear about your perspectives on first, what new developments in Bitcoin scaling have occurred since the beginning of this year, some of the broader trends and your predictions in more mainstream adoption, and then also on Starknet's side, Starknet's developments in Bitcoin and strides of making Bitcoin more programmable while still staying core to its true values, which I know that the team is very keen about. So thank you so much again, Eli, for being here. I first wanted to start off with a question on your why to Bitcoin. So you've been involved in the Bitcoin space since the very beginning. And I remember you even presented about Starks at a Bitcoin conference back in 2013. So I'm wondering if you can talk about what initially drew you to this space and what is your why for continuing to stay after all of these years?
Well, it's a long time dream of mine ever since 2013 when I got red pilled by Bitcoin. That was the place and time that I realized that ZK is the end game, not just for privacy, which led to Zcash, which I co-founded, but also for scalability, which led to StarkWare, which I also co-founded, and which has led the way in showing that like ZK, and in particular ZK Starks, are the way to scale Bitcoin. So I want to go back full circle to Bitcoin. And today, it's even more important than it was back in 2013, because today Bitcoin is this really great asset, but it's a little bit like gold or houses. It's mostly sitting there. And if you want to put it into action, if you want to borrow against it, if you want to invest using it, if you want to base a whole economy on it, you're basically pretty much forced to go to things that are not really Bitcoin native. Some of them are, in fact, very far from Bitcoin principles, of self-custody, decentralization, censorship resistance. You're going to have to do it on places like Base or, some of the blockchains that are not Bitcoin amenable. So it's even more important to get all of this stuff built on top of Bitcoin in the truest possible way according to Bitcoin's principles. And that's what StarkWare is committed to do.
Yeah, got it. And really like kind of the goal here of adhering to Bitcoin's core principles. As you mentioned, a lot of solutions nowadays, in order to extend Bitcoin's capabilities, we may be forced to go towards some solutions that are not exactly Bitcoin native. And some of the other limitations today, when you likened, say, for example, gold and real estate and even houses to Bitcoin, a lot of people are just holding it, using it as a store of value, but there's actually a lot more potential with what can be used. So really great to hear that you are, and the StarkWare team is going full circle back on Bitcoin. And just relating to that, I'm wondering if you can talk about what needs to be done today for Bitcoin to mainstream not only its adoption as a currency, but also its core values that you mentioned, like with decentralization, like with self-custody. What do we need to do in order to mainstream its adoptions on the value aspect?
Yeah, I think you need to address three important things. And those are, first of all, scalability, expressibility, and UX. So you need to have something that has far more scale. If any person in the US wanted to buy a cup of coffee a day using Bitcoin, it would probably take 10 years to settle one day of these, right? Because that's around 350 million or 300 plus million transactions. So you can do the math. That would take a very long time, much more than a day. So we need to offer that scale, because otherwise you won't have people buying their cups of coffee with things that are based on Bitcoin. The second thing you need is good UX, which means you want people to use it in a way that my mom, my friends can use, and that's not the case. Without the 24 words hanging around and you know hardware wallets and stuff like that, but in a way that like we all use in other payment systems. And finally, you need expressibility. Like today on Bitcoin, all you can do is transfer Bitcoin, right? Which is great. But if you want to do things like lending, borrowing, all kinds of smart contracts, you can't do it. And that needs to be allowed. Well, maybe not directly on the layer one that is Bitcoin, but you definitely want Bitcoin layer two that is as close as possible to Bitcoin and as seamlessly integrated as possible with it.
Got it. So there's three main aspects here. There's the scalability portion, and hopefully we can get to a day where we can even buy our coffee every day on Bitcoin. And then there's the user experience side. So not just people who are native to the crypto space who know how to utilize Bitcoin's functionality, but to the general public as well. And then there's the expressibility aspect that you mentioned with not just like buy and sell, but then also being able to lend, borrow, and use some smart contract functionalities as well. Got it. And you also mentioned a bit about the Bitcoin layer two side. I'm curious to hear about your thoughts on the general Bitcoin L2 space. So I know that you were a proponent for Bitcoin L2s as a way to expand Bitcoin's values to some of these more use cases that can benefit its core principles. But I'm curious to hear how you view the Bitcoin L2 space right now, especially we've seen in this last couple of years the proliferation of many Bitcoin-backed L2s. And then there are even some debates that are being sparked on what constitutes a true Bitcoin-based L2. And then even some designs where some individuals have been like criticizing that it may not be truly decentralized and so on. So curious to hear about how you view the Bitcoin L2 space right now and how it's evolved.
So I love the experimentation. I love the progress. I'm more drawn to things that are closer to, the better the security of like, doing stuff with your Bitcoin, the more I'm in favor of it. So, we partnered with Alpen Labs. We're building a BitVM bridge, and we'll be working with them to use the same bridge to bring Bitcoin in a more self-custodial manner also over to Starknet. And I love Citria, which is another team building that stuff. I am very much, in favor of advocating for OpCat and getting that out there, because then you can have true cryptographic security as opposed to economic security and one out of n trust assumptions, which are currently going to be the case for BitVM bridges. But in general, just like our approach to blockchain in general, I think there are a lot of, it's very territorial and very sort of tribal, and people tend to not like this thing or so on. We at Starknet don't view it this way. I think there's a lot of like very serious, very credible attempts to address it, and I look very favorably on a lot of them. Of course, many of them are our competitors. That's fine, but we're all part of this greater movement in which, even if we compete, we're advancing. In this case, Bitcoin, self-custodial holding of you owning your life, and of course, freedom and human dignity. So it's all good.
Yeah, I love that answer. So we're currently right now in the experimental phase, and like personally, you think that it's like really great to see kind of all of these new innovations, new developments happening, even though like the space historically has been a little more, as you say, a little more territorial, a little more tribal with what should be done or what's supposed to be. Um, so yeah, great to hear that, and also your point on the better the security, the more in favor, especially for a lot of Bitcoin holders today. they really do prioritize their security. So that's a great point that you mentioned. And you also mentioned a bit about how you do favor for the adoption of OPCAT to enable for true cryptographic security. I'm wondering if you can talk about some of StarkWare's current research when it comes to OPCAT. So I know that the team has some initiatives going around, say, for example, implementing a POC on a covenant, like implemented with OPCAT, and then also, I believe, another initiative building a Circle Stark verifier on top of OPCAT as well. So, wanted to hear your just general thoughts on where you see OPCAT research going in the next couple of months, and then, in addition, even if say OPCAT doesn't get enabled on Bitcoin directly, um, can Starknet and other kinds of Bitcoin-backed initiatives still move on with use cases that they're really trying to aim for?
Yeah, so OpCat for us at Starknet is like the bare minimum. It's sort of the crack through which you can really scale Bitcoin and offer it good UX, good expressibility, privacy, post-quantum security, a whole bunch of very important things that I would love to see. I would love to see the way we've evolved at Starknet is that we are like I'm getting more ambitious and more hopeful that stuff that is even more important for Bitcoin and can like really integrate, post-quantum secure ZK into it will be adopted. So now we're starting to think about things like it goes under the name of Stark, which is a whole bunch of opcodes that will allow you efficient Stark verification for, obviously Starknet will use it to be among the first to do that, but I would love to see many others come to that, to using basically ZK Starks, which are the end game for scaling Bitcoin. They're post-quantum secure, they have highest scale, no toxic waste from a cryptographic point of view. They're very, very in line with what Bitcoin represents and its values. So I know, and this is really interesting, like many different people from different parts of the sort of Bitcoin OG spectrum are saying things that give me a lot of encouragement. So, developers like Luke Dash Jr., who is very much, as maxi as a Bitcoin maxi can be, is supportive of having a very sort of aggressive approach to adding opcodes to Bitcoin that will allow Stark verification, even tweeted stuff to that end. On our team, Abdel from our exploration team, heading our ecosystem team actually, is pushing very much for research that is being done with the likes of Blockstream and Simplicity. We now have a Stark verifier written in Simplicity for STWO. The most significant way we're advancing this forward, so Bitcoin has a very limited sort of VM virtual machine that deals only with 32-bit numbers. So our next generation prover STWO, which is already in production, is very, very well suited towards Bitcoin because it requires only 32-bit operations and hashes in order to verify. Indeed, as you mentioned already a year ago, we posted on some testnet of Bitcoin an example of a Stark verifier for STWO, for this or a version of STWO. So we're doing a lot, and of course we put $1 million up for advancing research. We have a lot of folks looking into the pros and cons of CAT, folks like Post Capone, and many others who are like Bitcoin OG. So I think Bitcoin consensus moves very slow, and that's fine, and we acknowledge that and respect that. But I am very optimistic that in the mid to long term, there will be not just OpCat, but a lot more, and you will have true L2s that don't burden Bitcoin, but nevertheless allow you to expand the economic activities you do with your Bitcoin in the Bitcoin way.
Yeah, got it. So in the future, we can maybe anticipate, in addition to OpCat, perhaps some other opcodes that can really help make Bitcoin more expressive. And it's really great to hear that the StarkWare team is also working on OpStark as well.
Yes.
So allowing for more efficient and native Stark verification directly on Bitcoin.
Yes.
And then also just going off on your points with STWO and how STWO right now is very much compatible with Bitcoin verification. I know that recently um, the Starkware team announced proving the entire Bitcoin block header chain using the STWO prover. And I think that's very impressive because from what I remember, it only took around like $6.50, or sorry, 6.5 hours for $13. And
Yeah,
that's
$13.
almost,
Couple
yes,
of
only
coffee or
$13.
something. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah, for almost
McDonald's.
six. Yeah, a McDonald's meal for almost 16 years of history. So I think that's very, very incredible. So I wanted to just ask you about your thoughts on it and what implications you see this milestone having, especially when it comes to like the next generation for proof generation and also the cost and latency associated with it.
So this particular achievement um, really touches me deeply because this was, again, 12 and a half years ago when I presented what ended up being Starks for the first time in the blockchain space. And that was the talk that basically sparked the idea of using ZK to scale Bitcoin. I gave an example. An example I gave, I said almost to the word something like this. Today, when you fire up a new Bitcoin node, you need to download and verify the whole history from the Genesis block. And that takes a very long time, probably weeks or something today. In the future, you will be able to verify everything by downloading a small proof and verifying it in less than a second on your smartphone. So we are, I'd say, 80% of the way there, because now you can verify on your smartphone in less than a second the integrity of all of the 16 years worth of block headers, the proof of work. We are working on expanding that to actually accomplish what I spoke about 12 years ago, which is you can actually verify that the latest UTXO set of all these 16 years is valid. We'll get there. And you would still be able to do it in less than a second on your smartphone, which is, it's just took a long time and we're still not there. 12 years of work by many, many, many folks, but we'll get there. This is the way Bitcoin will work in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And you must feel that kind of full circle moment
Yes.
that you
Yes.
had. Yeah. So back when announcing the vision 12 years ago during the conference to that
Yep.
achievement right now, must have that full circle moment. It's very, very incredible that you can now that we're getting to the point where we can verify directly on a smartphone almost 16 years of history. And I feel like that's such a true milestone that we have seen. I mean, ZK was invented back in the 80s, and then we didn't really see too much adoption until maybe like 2010s era, and then that's when also you invented Starks and Fry and some of the other kind of protocols along there. And now we're starting to see more adoption and also more use cases being generated from there. So really great to hear all of these strides. Um, and in addition to we were talking a little bit about like a client-side verification, so being able to have users verify directly on their smartphone. I wanted to also ask you about client-side proving. I know that the STU's current version of its prover was really built for client-side proving. So wanted to hear more about like the kind of unique design considerations that Starkware incorporated for its STU prover to be more geared towards client-side proving and any kinds of new applications that you see can be enabled, whether it be like verifiable AI or proof of humanity, or even those expanding to Bitcoin as well. Like, for example, being able to like enable for these private transactions to occur on Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think the most interesting use case that we're exploring now for client-side proving is related to privacy on payments, but with very good UX guarantees. Because if you think about ZK and privacy, the technology works very well. The lack of adoption is because of the UX cost of interacting privately. And we've implemented a number of breakthroughs. We have today on Starknet both confidential ERC20s in production. We also have privacy pools working. And the next things we're exploring are client-side proving for getting good UX with privacy-preserving transactions. One of the perps exchanges, the main ones using our technology, Paradex, which is a really great perps exchange, is soon going to be deploying fully dark pools for its basically traders. The wallets that we're working with are exploring and moving towards having their clients' payments be shielded with privacy technology, even without any reduction in your degradation in your UX. So to me, good privacy with very good UX is really the missing part for privacy, and I think that's where client-side proving can do its best first.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, I think when we associate privacy and also the general public, um, that's kind of associated with this lack of convenience because users would have to take like an additional step or their like usual workflow in terms of interacting with the application that they're using becomes interrupted or it just has more overhead. So it's really great to hear from, at least on the Starkware team's end. Um, you're prioritizing for both the privacy, say, when it comes to payments or these shielded transactions, but with those same UX guarantees that users are already familiar with. So, and your point on the lack of adoption because of that UX cost, I think is also a really great point. So good to hear that you're also partnering with all of these wallets as well, and then have the confidential, you mentioned the confidential ERC20s and then also privacy pools. So great to hear all of these strides. And I also wanted to ask you about Starkware's Collider VM as well. So I know Starkware is always very innovative and like going from its fundamental roots in Starks and even its own kind of approaches with your guys' own prover, the STWO prover, and now also Collider VM as well. So wanted to hear about the motivation behind why Starkware chose to develop its own approach for performing computation on Bitcoin, enabling for trust minimized bridging, and how it may compare to some of the other constructions that currently exist out there, like say those that are BitVM based and any kinds of like unique applications or just unique features that it can enable.
Yeah, so first of all, this is a brilliant research breakthrough that started just as a research breakthrough, right? Meaning, here's a contribution to humanity, to research, to Bitcoin research. We have a very, very long line of very impressive math results that we sort of put out there for everyone to use and implement. Circle Starks, elliptic curve Starks, the proximity gaps results. Now the Ethereum Foundation is putting a $1 million prize to basically, close the gap between what we proved over a sequence of papers and what we conjecture and what all of the industry has converged on. And, it's a $1 million prize out there for math researchers. So our contribution to just research, right, in the form of white papers and peer-reviewed math papers will continue into the future all the time. And the Collider VM and Collider script papers are examples of that, led by Avihu Levi, our CPO, and one of the brilliant researchers in blockchain space. So I think that's the main importance, or the very first thing to say about that. That's like amazing research to be used by all. There's the way the Collider script and Collider VM works is a little bit different from the way that BitVM works. With BitVM, there's like, here's something that anyone can can expose fraud in and take a bond. With Collider script and Collider VM, it's a little bit different. It's the prover puts in a lot of computational work in advance to solve a certain riddle, and it has a cryptographic security, which means it's harder to break, but it is more costly to produce such a proof. So that is the trade-off. With BitVM, it's cheaper to produce a proof, but the security you get is, at the end of the day, the security of a bond that could be taken. Whereas with Collider script and Collider VM, the prover pays more, but once that payment has been made for finding basically a collision, you get something that is cryptographically secure, as opposed to that even a malicious party cannot compromise. So it's a trade-off, and as I said before about like different L2s, I also love all research that is going on to make to expand the scope of Bitcoin. So I love the BitVM works, even though they didn't, they came from sort of competing, or they didn't come from our team, but I love them. And then I love the Collider script work that Avihu Levy, Victor Kolobov, and others on our team and elsewhere, Andrew Polstra, Ethan Hellman led. It's you need both of them and more.
Yeah, and I think that really goes towards your one of your earlier points on just encouraging as much innovation as possible in the space and going with that experimentation phase. So you mentioned that there's currently like that trade-off that you mentioned that both Collider VM and also the BitVM based approach deals with in terms of the cost and also the cryptographic security as well. So for Collider VM, the prover needs to pay more, but we'll get a cryptographically secure guarantee. I'm just curious how this will affect on the user end with the general user experience compared to say like a some kind of Bitcoin L2 or other sort of bridging protocol that uses BitVM. So um, do you have any kinds of insights with how the UX would be affected with Collider VM?
I think because these are things that will ultimately be on the bridge side, the UX will not be noticed by the user. And it right with Collider VM, someone needs to pay a lot to create, basically transactions or collect them. And on the BitVM, it's less work, but then you have this bond thing. In both cases, users, to the extent these things are built and used, the users will not be aware of them, right? This will be part of the infrastructure. It's a little bit like, there are different consensus mechanisms. What does the user notice? So the user notices finality time, fees, scale. The user isn't aware of whether it's a tendermint, a proof of stake, proof of work based, and what is the hashing algorithm used in that, right? And so it's a bit like that. It's on the infrastructure layer.
Got it. Kind of all the burden or the cost burden is more on the infrastructure side rather than
Yeah.
having the users deal with it. Got
Yeah.
it. Yeah, and I feel like that's also similar to a lot of different kinds of proving systems out there. Like a lot of, say, ZK VMs, they eventually wrap their Stark proofs to Snark proofs, or say vice versa, depending on what they're looking for. But the end user side, they don't really have to like see that experience. So I think that that in of itself really helps enable for better UX because users don't have to really deal with any of these kinds of migrations when they happen. And then also wanted to talk a little bit more about the Starknet side as well, because I know that the team has had quite a lot of developments recently.
Yeah.
But just first, very curious to hear about the intention behind making Starknet an execution layer of Bitcoin, settling directly on Bitcoin in addition to Ethereum. So Starknet originally was very much Ethereum focused, Ethereum aligned. Now we're seeing um, some more developments being made on the Bitcoin side as well. But curious to hear how Starknet settling on Bitcoin will affect both the Bitcoin and Ethereum communities? Can we anticipate for, say, more trustless interoperability, more trustless flow of assets between these two chains, and any kinds of like new opportunities that you see can be enabled on Bitcoin that we haven't seen yet with Ethereum, with Starknet being an execution layer that's recently expanded to Bitcoin?
Yeah, so first of all, I think that Starknet sitting in between and settling both to Ethereum and to Bitcoin is great news for both of them because, again, unless you're some crazy maxi, you probably love or, appreciate both of them. And the ability to move more safely and with better UX and more cheaply between them is a great thing. Yes, we will basically, as more and more users adopt Starknet with all its amazing applications, and we see an increase all the time in, TVL, number of active users, TPS, the quality of UX is constantly improving. We now have pre-confirmation times of sub-second. Block time is reduced by a factor of 5x. Costs are still the lowest across all L2s. You want people to be able to do their transactions in a way that is fully self-custodial with both their Bitcoin and with Ethereum, and then later on maybe also with other stuff. So I think this will be a great benefit to Bitcoin and Ethereum. The way it will work is that we will constantly strive to, so we already settle, the way we settle our proofs onto Ethereum is we have smart contracts that verify it, and that's our basically security guarantee. We'll add security guarantees to Bitcoin using the safest technology that exists at the time. So we are working with Alpen Labs together, one of the very best BitVM teams, in order to use the same infrastructure for BitVM settling of Starknet onto Bitcoin, and of course advocating for OpCat and, as I said, OpStark to get true, direct, and highest grade cryptographic assurances for the Bitcoin settlement of Starknet, which we will get there. I'm very optimistic.
Got it. Yeah, it's really great to hear some of the benefits that come with bridging both of these two ecosystems together, and very excited to see what Starknet does next with it. And also in terms of recent developments, I'm aware that Starknet recently introduced its decentralized sequencing architecture
Yes.
on mainnet. So curious to hear from your end what this update means for Starkware's greater decentralization roadmap, and if there's any kinds of lessons or any kinds of learnings that the team took from this migration that will be applied in some future developments in the roadmap, say with enabling full decentralized sequencing or fully decentralized proving.
Yeah, so it's exactly a very important step in that direction. First of all, let me explain the immensity of the achievement. So there was a whole centralized stack that was at the middle of Starknet, where all transactions were submitted to a centralized pool that went to a centralized sequencer and then a centralized prover. And basically, all of that middle part has been completely thrown and replaced with things that are, and a lot of parts were written in Python. All of that was rewritten in Rust afresh, incorporating Tendermint consensus, having mempool, fee markets, moving to the STRK as the token for paying fees. And all of this was, of course, done on a living system, which actually has a lot of older dependencies, and was done as it was running in production. So this was a huge upgrade that took us a very long time to work on and to pull off, and it was pulled off. I'm very proud of the achievement. Now we have, instead of that single sequencer stack, we have a mempool, we have a peer-to-peer network, we have a peer-to-peer set of sequencers. Now, currently, for a short time, we are controlling all of those, but they are implementing the true Tendermint protocol that will then be open to stakers later in 2026. And so all of this is like part of our commitment to decentralization. Now, it is worth pointing out that we are the only L2. There are like 200 or more L2s on Ethereum. We are the only one that is actually has a plan and is working and making steps towards decentralization. Now, even the discussion is shifting to, we don't need decentralized L2s. Actually, centralized L2s are some sort of an end state, which I think is, it's just not going to play out that way. The whole point of blockchain is decentralization. If you have something centralized, it's not going to have long-term value and stickiness to it. So we are the only ones who are working on it. We're also the only ones that trust their security technology to a level that allows decentralization. Let me double click on that. In order to decentralize an L2, which is based either on fraud proofs or on validity proofs, it means anyone can sequence, offer a block, propose it. You need your security rails to be worthy enough to allow that to happen. Starknet is the only layer 2 that actually trusts its technology, not just on tweets, right? We don't have any security council running machines to check that the right computation is being proved. We don't have any trusted execution environment or any special authority that you need it sort of on the side. No, once a proof comes out, it is accepted on L1 because our systems are sound and complete. And we are the only L2 to have decentralization and to trust our technology. And we'll continue advancing in this direction of decentralizing, expanding, opening it up for everyone to operate, because that's really the end state of this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And like what you mentioned, kind of the whole point of blockchains, the whole reason why we're in this space is the decentralization component. And it's really great to hear that at least this trade-off that a lot of other teams have been facing with when it comes to decentralization and security, that the StarkWare team has both that full path plan to decentralization while having a cryptographically sound system and a way where like the team trusts the cryptography. So that's all really great to hear. And just curious, um, on your end, once full decentralization on the roadmap for Starknet is complete, what does that look like to you, and what would that look like to users as well?
To users, it will look the same as it looks today. Great UX, low fees, a lot of functionality. They will have the option, as they have today, to take some of their STRK and soon also Bitcoin, stake it, and participate in some way via delegation. Or if they want, they can operate a node themselves that will sequence and prove. So they can offer operation services. But most of the users will probably just view it as in the same old way. What it will mean is that you will have in the wild, basically anyone can set up a validator, a sequencer, a prover, and offer services, propose blocks, prove them, get of course rewarded with new minted tokens with fees.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when it comes to these kinds of developments and implementations of, say, like these decentralization components or even new migrations, the really end goal here is to make the users not see any kind of change in it. So you still maintain that great UX. And as you mentioned, the users will still see those low fees, be able to offer operation services, and then now anyone can say like set up and participate in the network. But for the general UX side, everything still remains like relatively the same. I think that that's really like the really important part when it comes to say migrating or just implementing new developments from the roadmap. Really great to keep the overall user experience kind of the same. And also wanted to hear more. I know that Starkware is, in addition to being committed on the decentralization roadmap, is also committed to being a Bitcoin standard company as well. So wanted to hear about what being a Bitcoin standard company means in practice, how Starkware upholds its values as well.
Yeah, so we already have a large Bitcoin treasury. We're gonna continue having that, expanding it. We, of course, StarkWare has a large STRK treasury. We also have, ETH on our balance sheet. We're very, we believe in having a significant presence in, the ecosystems that we support, and we're very proud of that. We also believe that Bitcoin is going to, outperform a lot of other assets. So it's like a good way to do stuff. We're probably going to try and be even more active in, generating yield on our Bitcoin and other assets because we think it's important, and we'll probably do a lot of it on Starknet because it's the best place to do it. Yep.
Yeah, nice. And just as a last question before we end today's interview, this is more about just scoping out on a broader view. I remember compared to the last House of ZK interview that we had together, that was in the beginning of 2025. I'm curious to hear what new developments you have seen occurred in Bitcoin scaling or just in the general broader ecosystem for this past year. Do you have any kinds of insights or predictions on how the space will evolve in the coming years? I know that you recently also met with Michael Saylor. You're in New York right now, and I don't know if you have any kinds of current like thoughts on, say, institutional adoption as well. I know that Starkware is very committed on the user adoption side, and one of your goals is to serve the next 1 billion users and to um, have serve and reach those 1 billion people, but wanted to hear if you also had any thoughts on the institutional adoption side, just
Yeah,
general thoughts.
I
Yeah.
think these will the institutional adoption will expand. I think we see every day like more treasury companies expanding to other things. I think there'll be a lot more demand for this thing that we started our discussion with. There'll be a lot more demand for scaling Bitcoin in the Bitcoin way, for allowing Bitcoin's value to be unleashed on systems that are decentralized, truly decentralized, censorship resistance, where you own your life. And I think that's going to be the next wave. And of course, we'll lead the charge there.
Yeah, absolutely. And come full circle again.
Yep.
So thank you so much, yeah, Ellie,
Thank you,
for
Alex.
being here and for all of your insights. Yeah, really great to hear all the developments that were made within this past year and within the past few months with Starknet and Starkware, and really also appreciate how much focus and how much dedication the team has to adhering to the core values of Bitcoin, whether it be decentralization, whether it be having those cryptographically secure guarantees as well. So not kind of having this trade-off in which you need to, in say like making say Bitcoin more programmable, you're also still staying true to its core values, which I believe is very important. And really excited to hear what the Starkware team does next as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Alice. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.